Shalom, family. Forget everything the mainstream media is telling you about the upcoming day of disclosure. The global elite are using Hollywood scripts to prime your mind for a deceptive cosmic reveal, but the real disclosure is already hiding in plain sight. Pull up the global map right now and look at the edges. You are not looking at a frozen wasteland of Antarctica. You are staring directly at the perimeter wall as described in 1st Enoch or Hanukkah. When Sargon II conquered Samaria, thousands of Israelites did not just assimilate. They escaped entirely, embarking on a year-and-a-half journey to a realm untouched by the Babylonian matrix. This is not science fiction, and it is not myth. Today, we are breaking down the hidden physics, the pristine biology, and the prophetic countdown of Arzerith. If you want the truth about who is waiting in the wilderness of the people, clear your mind. To understand how a population of thousands has remained hidden from modern satellites, you must completely unlearn the globalist map. Look at the layout of the Enochian enclosure, where the structural blueprints can be verified directly in the text. We are currently inside the bounded celestial circuits that define this inner domain. In 1st Hanukkah, chapters 72 through 82, the prophet outlines the precise mathematical portals and fixed tracks that enclose our known world. This localized grid is subject to continuous physical resets, artificial digital clocks, heavy metal pollution, and matrix frequencies. Surrounding these 6 continents is the Antarctic threshold, the ice wall boundary. The matrix tells you it is just a frozen continent at the bottom of a spinning ball, but ancient cosmology reveals it is the structural perimeter keeping the central populations contained. This structural lockdown is precisely what ancient prophecy documented long before modern cartography. Proverbs chapter 8 verse 27 states that when the Creator established the heavens, he set a compass upon the face of the depth. He drew a physical circular perimeter around our waters. Job chapter 38 verse 22 and 23 confirms that the Father has locked down the boundaries, asking if you have entered into the treasures of the snow or seen the treasures of the hail reserved against the time of trouble. The ice is a physical barrier system. If you trace this layout past that frozen boundary line, you enter the high-frequency outer realms, the geographic and spiritual sanctuary documented in 1st Hanukkah chapter 18, where the pillars of heaven rest upon the physical foundations of the earth. If you think this frozen boundary is restricted to ancient parchment, look at what happened when modern military power tried to breach it.
Strangely enough, there is left in the world today an area as big as the United States that's never been seen by a human being. And that's beyond the pole on the other side of the South Pole from Middle America. And I think it's quite astonishing that there should be an area as big as that unexplored.
It's a tremendous
So
challenge.
there's a lot of adventure left down at the bottom of the world.
Admiral Richard E. Byrd, during his extensive polar expeditions under Operation High Jump, famously reported in his live television broadcast that there was an undiscovered land area larger than the United States beyond the South Pole. His logbooks describe penetrating past the ice barrier into a vast, temperate realm untouched by the Arctic freeze. The establishment immediately classified his findings and locked down the perimeter under the Antarctic Treaty of 1959, ensuring the public would never look past the frozen wall. With the geographical perimeter locked down by military treaty, the system had to bury the historical receipts of the people who crossed it. When Sargon II successfully conquered the northern tribes in Samaria around 722 BCE, he carved his victories directly onto the palace walls at Khorsabad. According to those ancient cuneiform inscriptions, Sargon explicitly claimed to have led away 27,290 Israelites as captives. The Matrix wants you to believe these specific groups were simply absorbed into ancient Assyrian culture. I believe this was a calculated escape to an uninhabited world. 2nd Esdras, chapter 13, verses 40 through 45, tells us they made a secret pact to leave the mainstream nations behind, journeying into an untouched region. Verse 45 states that through that country there was a great way to go, namely of 1.5 years, and the same region is called Arzereth. An advanced civilization hiding right on our earth sounds like pure fantasy because the Matrix has carefully conditioned you to view it that way. Hollywood has already planted the exact visual blueprint in your mind through the concept of breakaway civilizations like Wakanda. When we look at modern media through the lens of predictive programming, it becomes clear that these specific templates are designed to normalize the public to concepts that are currently considered classified. By showing an advanced nation living secretly alongside a primitive world using light-bending technology, the system subtly prepares your mind for the eventual disclosure of hidden realms. While Hollywood sells you localized fiction, the prophets left behind a comprehensive regional blueprint. We have the receipts for this structural split directly in the text. Isaiah chapter 11 verse 12 explicitly draws the boundary lines when it says, "The Father will assemble the outcasts of Israel and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth." The outcasts were cast out as a collective body into hidden outer lands, while the southern tribe was shattered across the global grid. Where are they waiting right now? Ezekiel chapter 20 verse 35 tells us that the Father will bring his people into the wilderness of the people to plead face to face. The ancient text of 2nd Esdras chapter 13 verse 42 backs this up, documenting that the 10 tribes escaped the Assyrian captivity to guard the statutes they failed to keep in their own land. As we step past this boundary, the sudden panic of the central elite begins to make perfect sense. They are working overtime to prime the masses for a deceptive disclosure narrative. They want you looking up at the sky, terrified of an extraterrestrial threat. But 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verse 11 warns us that because men did not love the truth, the Father would send them a strong delusion that they should believe a lie. The ultimate reveal at the end of this age is not extraterrestrial. It is a physical dimensional reunion with our family who have been safely hidden in the outer realm of this earth. Matthew chapter 24 verse 31 tells us that when the horn blows, the messengers will gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. This is not a symbolic reunion because we are talking about a physical realm operating under an entirely different set of natural laws. This is a society running centuries ahead of the central world, operating under Zadokite righteousness. These technological marvels are powered directly by absolute obedience to the Creator's unbroken natural laws. Out in Arzerith, there is zero scarcity, zero pollution, and no drilling for oil. Architecture and agriculture exist in a perfect loop. This matches the legal promise of the Torah in Deuteronomy chapter 28, verses 1 through 12, which states that if a people diligently obey the voice of the Father, the blessings will overtake them, the earth will yield its absolute maximum potential, and the Father will open his good treasure to bless all the work of their hands. When you align a society with creation laws, the engineering completely shifts. The floating ships and massive crystalline spires out there do not burn fuel. They function as geometric antennas that execute ether extraction, drawing infinite ambient energy directly from the firmament. The entire realm is bathed in a distinct light frequency called the frequency of Yahuwah, radiating a pure spectrum healing frequency that eliminates disease. This is the exact environmental blueprint promised in the New Jerusalem restoration in Revelation chapter 22, verse 2, which documents the tree of life whose leaves were for the healing of the nations. Exodus chapter 23 verse 25 gives us the medical receipt, promising that when you serve the Creator, sickness will be taken away from the midst of thee. This clean power grid does more than illuminate cities. It fundamentally alters human flesh. The outcasts who fled the Assyrian captivity have been preserved from the genetic intervention and heavy metal contamination that has degraded the DNA of the populations inside the central grid. This is the exact preservation standard Noah achieved in Genesis chapter 6 verse 9, which notes that Noah was perfect in his generations, meaning his genetic lineage was uncorrupted. Genetic preservation is only the baseline because the true power lies in their unbroken connection to the frequency of creation itself. Because they have been isolated from the linguistic corruption of Babylon, they have maintained the original high-frequency spoken language of creation. This fulfills the prophecy of Zephaniah chapter 3 verse 9, which states that the Father will turn to the people a pure language, that they may all call upon his name. Because they have spent generations guarding the Torah without pagan interruption, eating uncorrupted agriculture, and drinking ether-charged water, their cellular degradation has stopped. They are approaching 1,000-year lifespans without a trace of physical aging. Longevity is the natural baseline for uncorrupted human biology, matching the ancestral receipts in Genesis chapter 5, where Adam and Methuselah lived nearly 1,000 years. Over the last 2,700 years, that tight disciplined remnant multiplied into a race of healthy giants of the faith, preserving the bloodline until the day of the final reveal. If longevity is our natural baseline, why are the populations inside the central grid dying so young? The answer is a quiet mathematical trap known as the calendar war. Time is a physical frequency that interacts directly with your DNA. The true calendar is the 364-day master key. The sun's precise geometric movement through the portals guarantees a flawless 52-week year without fractions or leap years. The year legally begins on a Wednesday, which is day 4 of creation documented in Genesis chapter 1, the exact day the sun was activated and entered the spring equinox portal. The book of Jubilees chapter 6 verses 32 through 38 dropped the warning on this exact calendar trap thousands of years ago, stating that the children of Israel would forget the path of the years and disturb all the seasons. Babylon forced the central world onto the lunar era, a 354-day lunar drift that falls exactly 10 days short of creation reality. This artificial shift misaligns your biological rhythm from cosmic reality, locking your cells into a state of decay. The Matrix did this to disrupt the appointed feasts, which are precise intersections where the frequency of the firmament aligns with the Father's calendar. Keeping these exact days locks your biology and your spirit into an absolute harmony of power. Out in Arzerith, they have never missed a single synchronization. By tracking these precise synchronizations, we can finally decipher the countdown clocks of the prophets. We have now hit the ultimate legal expiration date on the prophetic calendar. According to Psalm 90 verse 10, in the ancient text of the Apocalypse of Abraham, a prophetic generation is defined as exactly 70 years. In 1 Enoch chapter 10 verse 12, the angel is commanded to bind the fallen watchers fast for 70 generations under the hills of the earth until the day of their judgment. This means the blueprint is fixed to a timeline of 70 generations times 70 years, which equals exactly 4,900 years, or 70 total jubilees. That timeline lands us squarely in our current window. The administrative lease of the fallen entities over the central grid has officially reached zero. The 400-year affliction lease of our captivity documented in Genesis chapter 15 verse 13 has legally expired. Look at Isaiah chapter 25 verse 7, where the prophet declares that the Father will destroy the face of the covering cast over all people and the veil that is spread over all nations. That covering is the low-frequency, dense terrestrial skin that traps our spirit inside the linear time trap of the Babylonian grid. Paul performs a forensic audit on this exact verse in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verses 51 through 53, explaining the transition from our current matrix anatomy to the radiant biology of the outer sanctuary. He explains that we shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet. This corruptible must put on incorruption, and this mortal must put on immortality. Paul is telling you that to enter the uncorrupted environment of the outer realm, your biology must undergo a quantum shift. He reaches back to the prophet Hosea chapter 13 verse 14 to deliver the final knockout blow to the matrix, where the Father issues a direct legal decree against the underworld, promising to ransom them from the power of the grave and redeem them from death. When you put on that garment of light in the uncorrupted outer lands, death is completely stripped of its jurisdiction over your biology. It is destroyed by the life force of the Creator. But do not mistake this for a passive rescue mission, because you cannot step into a high-frequency sanctuary while holding on to a low-frequency mindset. You cannot enter that high-frequency realm while still carrying the pollution of Babylon. The transition to Arzerith is an active spiritual extraction process. This is the Ezekiel chapter 20 protocol. The remnant must be brought into the wilderness of the people to be judged and caused to pass under the rod, as written in verse 37. Every bit of Babylonian programming, every calendar error, and every low-frequency survival mechanism must be systematically shed in the staging grounds before you are legally allowed to step through the portal into the high-frequency garden. These are your marching orders for the 70th generation right now. Reclaim the 364-day Zadokite solar clock to pull your spirit out of the Babylonian time trap. Purge the Babylonian system from your biology and your spirit through strict obedience to the Torah. Keep your lamps full of the pure oil of truth, preparing your temple to bear the image of the heavenly remnant. The ancient future is not a movie, family. It is your literal inheritance. Align your frequency, guard the covenants, and get ready for the move. Keep studying the scriptures. Thank you for watching. Hallelujah.